Welcome to Coach Bennett's podcast, where every run has a purpose, where kindness is hardcore, where this is about running, and this is not about running, where every starting line is a finish line in disguise, where rambling still gets you where you need to be, where pineapple will never ruin your pizza, and the sodas, adult and not adult kind, are always cold, and where there is room on the starting line for everybody. I'm Coach Bennett. Thank you for letting me be a part of your day. Let's get started. Welcome to another episode of Coach Bennett's podcast. This one actually is episode 89. And I'm saying that because for those of you that listened to episode 88, the previous episode, I went on this huge ramble about how awesome 1989 was. The music, the movies. I even talked about Taylor Swift's album 1989 because for some reason, I thought it was episode 89. It wasn't. It was episode 88. And you know what stinks? 88's a great year too, for all sorts of things. Arts, music, milestones, and I blew it. I didn't talk about 1988 at all. And don't worry, I'm not going to talk about 1988 right now, even though I really, really want to. But this is, in fact, episode 89. So you're not getting two episode 89s. You're just getting a misnamed episode 88. So this is, like I said, episode 89, Stressed Out. That's right, stressed out. And we are going to talk about this for a number of different reasons. First and foremost, because so many of you are telling me you're stressed out. But this isn't just for the athletes, the listeners that are stressed out right now. It's for everyone. Because the facts of the matter are this: we will all be stressed out. Because it is a very human thing to be stressed out. So this is for everybody. Now, there's also a coaching component to this too. You've heard me say that if you can let your running be about more than running, then your running can help you get better at more than running, which is true. There's another side to this though, that things other than running can hurt your running. So from a coaching perspective, if we can help you deal with, manage, acknowledge, get help for your stress, you're going to have better runs. It's just that simple. And if we don't try to help you, if you don't try to help yourself when you're stressed out, overstressed, dealing with long-term stress, what's going to happen is you're not going to make adjustments like you need to with your running. So your running is going to beat you up while your stress is beating you down. And I'll tell you what, that ain't a good combo, y'all. So there's a lot of different reasons why we're talking about this. It's extremely timely, but also from a running perspective, whether it's the athlete's perspective or the coach's perspective, it's essential to learn how to manage stress in your life better. This isn't about erasing stress. We can't, nor should we, erase stress in our life. It is a normal human response, often to situations, experience, moments where we feel like we're out of control or we're in a situation where we can't manage what's going on. That's okay. The key is, could we potentially be handling this stress better? Or are we potentially allowing this stress to permeate our lives in ways that it shouldn't? Are we having long-term stress that can have ramifications, negative ramifications, not just to our running, but to our lives? So that's why we're talking about this here. It's going to help you become a better runner. More importantly, it's going to help with all of the time before you get to the starting line and after you cross the finish line, also known as the rest of your life that you're not running, which is the overwhelming majority of your life. So let's start first and foremost with just reiterating the fact that stress, it's normal. It's absolutely normal. And like I said, it's just a response that we have, a very natural human response to situations and things that make us feel like we've lost control, we're out of control, or we're unable to manage, okay? So just Wrap your head around that to begin with, because I think a lot of times we give up a lot of control when it comes to stress because we don't really know what we're dealing with. And I think it really helps to just understand what we're dealing with. The causes of that stress, that's a different story. But the stress we're feeling often comes from feeling out of control or unable to manage a situation, which, like I said, is natural, right? Because there are situations where we feel out of control. There are situations, experiences, moments where we feel like we can't manage what's occurring. Totally normal, right? What we don't want is for this to become long-term stress. What we don't want is to be overwhelmed by it. Because there are responses, physical and emotional responses we have to stress, right? And if you think about it right now, and I want all of us to kind of do this together. When you get stressed out, how do you feel? And I bet if we're all throwing something out, most of us are going to have most of the answers in common. I feel like my heart rate picks up, and I get kind of antsy or irritable. Okay, makes sense. I get frustrated very quickly. Makes sense. Everything seems to be on fast forward, and I can get anxious. I can get tense. I get a headache. I feel like my shoulders are getting tighter. All of these are very, very common physical and emotional responses to being stressed out. So we're going to pause here for a second and jump into coach role again. Now imagine you're a coach, not an athlete. You have an athlete that's experiencing some or all of these symptoms. How are you going to adjust what you have to do that day in light of this information you've gotten that your athlete is maybe got a headache, shoulders feel tense, their heart rate's up, they feel like they don't have a lot of focus. They're frustrated and irritable. They're probably tired because of that elevated heart rate and how physically challenging and exhausting it is to be stressed for a long period of time. I imagine from a coaching perspective, you're going to make some pretty serious adjustments to what you had planned that day, up to and including potentially not running at all, because you realize, like I mentioned earlier, that with the stress beating you down, the last thing you really need to do sometimes is throw in a run where the athlete may not make the best decisions, or it just may be too much and may still just beat up the athlete. So if you take that into account, which I think is a really great exercise, so you can empathize with yourself when you're stressed out and you think you can just grind through being overwhelmed by stress. Well, if you're a coach working with an athlete you care about, you're not going to try to grind through an athlete that's super stressed out. What you're going to do is make adjustments to the run, but first and foremost, what you're going to do is try to work with the athlete to try to deal with the stress that they're going through, to try to manage the stress that they have, and maybe lessen the stress that they have in their life by helping them. That's what you would do as a coach. Isn't it interesting that when we work with ourselves, not as coaches to athletes, but just as me talking to me, I usually don't act that kind. I usually don't act that intelligently towards myself or as supportive as a great coach would. Usually, I'm just a big douche canoe to myself. That doesn't help the situation. Now, if we kind of do a devil's advocate here and just say, all right, well, let's actually have the coach act like a complete jerk towards the athlete, and I start going through this scenario, you'd be like, no, that's awful. You're only making things worse. It's funny how much clearer we see things when we take ourselves out of the story, right? Because when we are in the story, we suddenly don't act like these great characters, at least these great characters we believe should be acting like great characters. We put ourselves in as the villain. Maybe we don't realize it, but we sure do act like villains towards ourselves when we need ourselves to be heroes. Just throwing that out there. Now, from a coaching perspective, when I have athletes that are stressed out, I have a number of things that I believe can help them. okay? Now, I'm going to say this before I get into some things that I believe can help. Long-term stress, very severe, sharp, intense stress, doesn't have to be long-term, just a heightened, stressed out situation. It's always a good idea to ask yourself, if you're the person who's dealing with the stress, or if you have someone you care about, whether that's an athlete, could be a family member, could be a friend, could be a teammate, could be a student, if you feel like they're dealing with a seismic amount of stress, or they've been dealing with stress for a really long time, getting expert help is what you should do. Now, a lot of people think that going and getting help is a sign of weakness. I think if you've been listening to me at all, you know what I'm going to say to this. And if you've never listened to me, get ready, because it's not going to change. This is what I'm going to say. Asking for help is never a sign of weakness. It is always a sign of strength. So if you are someone that's dealing with stress and has been dealing with stress and it's affecting your life not in a good way, then you can take some control here in a very powerful way and ask for some help, expert help. Now, you don't have to even go straight to an expert. You can ask a friend or a teammate or a family member, like I said, and see if they can help you get that expert help. So I just want that out there, that if this becomes something above and beyond what I'm mentioning could help, well, go see the experts, all right? I'm a coach. I can help with a lot of things, but I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. So there are people that go to school. There are people that do training. There are people who do this for a living. They're experts. Doctors go to school for a long time for a reason. Just throwing that in there. So I'm going to go over some things where if you're dealing with stress and it's not something that needs to be elevated, okay, here's some things that you can do. But I'm also going to tell you about some of the negative effects of not dealing with stress, all right? Because from a coaching standpoint, a lot of athletes don't consider non-physical things to be in their wheelhouse for how to become a better runner. So, yeah, stress, well, I got stress. It's not a big deal. I'm going to do my repeat eights. Or, you know what? I do my strength training and I do the volume of running I'm supposed to do. I don't need all this woo-woo stuff. This ain't woo-woo stuff. Your repeat eights and your strength training aren't going to be as good as they could be unless you can manage your stress in a healthy and positive way. Period. End of story. Done. So if you want to always not be 100%, okay, ignore this stuff. That's fine. Well, it's not fine. It's actually terrible, but you know what I'm saying. Anyway, I'm going to start with a lot of the negatives. So if you're not managing stress in a positive and healthy way, what happens? Because what you can see are a lot of clues to what you should be doing when you're in a stressful period in your life, or you have a stressful experience, or you're dealing with something that's stressful for a period of time, whether it's, days or weeks. There are things that are going to be negatively impacted by this stress. So for one, all right, stress can cause, as I mentioned earlier, anything from anger to sadness, frustration, fear. It can affect your energy. It can affect your appetite, your ability to focus. It can have a negative impact on what you're interested in and your passions. So it can really kind of mute your motivation and your inspiration. It can lead to poor sleeping. It can lead to headaches, like I said, muscle pains, all sorts of issues, tummy issues. All right. So if anyone's had stress, and if you're a runner, you've probably had race day tummy issues or maybe issues before a big workout. That's stress related. Okay, those butterflies, that's a beautiful idea. Like, oh, they're butterflies flying through my chest. Well, sometimes it's more like a blender, and it's taking all of your food and kind of blending it up and then saying, like, listen, we're out of here, all right? This volcano's about to blow. And that's where stress suddenly shows up as a line for the porta-john before a race. I mean, if you want to know how stressful race day can be, Just look how long the lines are at the bathrooms. So it can show up as tummy issues as well. That's just code for diarrhea anyway. How funny is that word? I'm so sorry. I'm not sorry, actually. It's funny. Did you ever do those kid songs like when you're sitting in the tub and the water turns to mud, diarrhea. Did you ever do that? Okay, maybe you didn't. Anyway, I did because I'm an idiot and they're hilarious. So that's another place where it can show up. And it can also show up in other, potentially scarier ways, because when you're dealing with stress in a negative way, sometimes what you're trying to do is numb it, hide it, and that can turn into abuse of alcohol, abuse of drugs, or really any other kind of substances. So these are things that I think are really good to start with. I know you're probably thinking, wait, dude, I thought you were going to start with ways to deal with stress in a positive and healthy way. I am. But I think it's important for you to first realize how it can negatively affect you not dealing with it, because therein lies the answers, many of the answers at least, to how you can effectively deal with it. So I mentioned the fact that stress can cause things like anger, sadness, frustration, fear. Okay, well, that leads me to the first idea. Well, how can we positively deal with things like anger, sadness, frustration, our fears? Well, one way is to talk to people. See, what happens a lot of times when we get very stressed out, we get antisocial. We head to the cave instead of the community. And when you're stressed out, you should go and find your people. See, here's the thing. If you're feeling like you're getting stressed out, it's going to help to talk about it. I'm not saying it's going to fix everything, but it is going to help. It's going to help to have an ear to just listen to what's stressing you out. Because a lot of times when we get stressed out, we bottle it up and we won't even take the time to think about what we're really stressed about. So sometimes having someone or people, could be teammates, friends, family, confidants, whatever, to talk about why you're stressed out, you're going to feel like you're not alone, which is super important, because those emotions that I was mentioning, anger, sadness, frustration, fear, they're always worse when you're alone. They're always worse when you feel like you don't have support. They are always worse when you feel like there's no help in sight, no help possible. So if you can share with people, it's going to help. So if you're getting stressed out, it's not going to be easy, but don't head for your cave. Head for your community. I mentioned that it can affect your energy, and that's going to show up in a lot of different ways. It's going to show up in sometimes a lack of appetite, a lack of focus, and like I said, it can pull you away from your interests and your passions. So I want you to also surround yourself when you're stressed out with things that interest you, that you're passionate about. And I want you to pause, and this is a great place to just breathe. Breathing's a wonderful tool to calm yourself down and gather some focus. So here's a wonderful opportunity to just breathe for a minute and think about those things that, yes, interest you, that you're passionate about, that you care about, and just differentiate between not being interested and not passionate about them and being stressed out and not having the capability to feel those things about those things, because you are still interested in them. You are still energized by them. You still have a passion for those things. Maybe it's running, maybe it's reading, maybe it's writing, maybe it's movies. Who knows? It could be bird watching for all I know. There was a woodpecker in our backyard yesterday. Oh my goodness, woodpeckers are awesome. So maybe you're jazzed by seeing woodpeckers. The point is, you have to sometimes remind yourself of things you haven't forgotten. You're just willfully ignoring. Because these are the things that if you steer clear from, because when you've been stressed out to a high degree or stressed out for a long time, you're going to steer clear from them. That's just how we operate. And yet they are exactly the things that usually benefit you, and help you deal with stress. So the things that will help you when you're stressed out are usually the things you're going to move away from, like your community and like your passions. So pause, breathe, nice and relaxed. Bring that heart rate down because your heart rate's probably elevated from being stressed. And remind yourself, I'm really stressed out, which, by the way, is a great help. Simply acknowledging you're stressed out is going to be a great help. I can't tell you the amount of times I've had to work with an athlete and just get them to admit they're stressed out. They're so obviously stressed out, but they won't admit it. When they admit it, it's a great release. It doesn't mean that whatever's stressing them out is no longer stressing them out. What it does mean, at least they're aware. And that awareness is huge. It's absolutely huge, because when you're aware that you're stressed out, you're more likely to pause when you need to pause. Pause when you're about to get irrationally angry or even rationally angry. Pause when you're getting frustrated. Pause when you're starting to have that fear creep up. Pause when you feel like you're losing focus. You at least can stop and say, wait, I'm really stressed out. That's what's causing these things, okay? The other thing is that stress can do, I mentioned loss of appetite. It can also screw up your sleep. So just pause for a moment now and think about that. When you're stressed out, two of the things that aid recovery, I should say not just aid recovery, but power the machine that you are sleep and fueling. Eating, baby. And you know what happens? Loss of appetite and poor sleep. So not being able to fully recover, not being able to power this machine, if you just throw the stress out the window, imagine you're getting poor sleep and you haven't been eating well. How are you going to feel? Now combine that with being stressed out, because the being stressed out is causing you to potentially have poor sleep and loss of appetite, which means you're going to have to actively work to get better sleep. So what might have been a routine 4 days ago before the stress arrived, where you just went into bed and fell asleep, now you're tossing and turning. You may have to have a more concerted effort to set yourself up to have a better sleep and not stress about not having the best possible sleep, because you're aware and you realize one of the reasons why I'm not sleeping well is the stress. So let's not beat ourselves up for not getting the greatest sleep. Let's just try to get the best sleep we can, considering the fact that we're stressed out. Yes, I don't feel hungry, but I'm aware that being stressed out is causing this loss of appetite. I know I need to fuel myself if I'm going to recover and power this extraordinary badass machine that I am. These are things that can aid you. Again, it's not erasing all of the stress. What it's doing is making sure the stress doesn't cause more problems than it already is. I've said before, on a run, let's just say it's an easy run, and you're wondering, why is this easy run so hard? Just think to yourself, am I doing things that's making this run harder than it needs to be? And more often than not, you are. So when you're stressed out, maybe remove yourself, become that great coach or that great teammate, and say, you know what? We're making this harder on ourselves by not eating the way we're supposed to, by not resting the way we're supposed to. So let's at least do those things and make this less hard. It's still going to be hard. Being stressed out is hard. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying any of these things is some magic elixir that's going to make it easy. What I'm saying is, let's make it less hard. So much of coaching is about helping athletes make things less hard, because athletes do a wonderful job making hard things harder than they need to be and easy things harder than they need to be. So that's just something to say. I'm going to bring up the elephant in the room right now, though, about running, because I'm sure some of you are thinking like, well, can I run? Yes, if that exercise, that movement is a positive stressor in your life. Remember, every run you do is a stress. There's a physical stress associated with running. What you want to make sure is that when you're dealing with other stress in your life, negative stress in your life, that running does not become another negative stress. Too often it does. That's why I wanted to talk about this from that coaching perspective and how we're going to be making adjustments. Because if running suddenly becomes another opportunity for you to get frustrated, angry, sad with yourself because the running isn't going the way you want it to go because you're stressed out and you just double down on the negativity, well, then we shouldn't be running. So it's another moment where you're going to have to be a great coach and teammate to yourself and say, this run can aid me in dealing with stress. It can help me manage my stress if I run the right way for the right reasons with the right purposes. Be on the lookout for you using running as a punishment, or even as a penance, as opposed to a positive in your life. Be careful, because it's just going to dig a deeper hole, and you're going to start to look at something that is a release normally and a positive release normally as something that is actually another thing that stresses you out. This is also another opportunity for me to have a commercial for you keeping a running journal, because writing to me is a conversation. I told you not to run to your cave, run to your community. Well, you are a part of your community. And when you write in a running journal or a diary or just a journal in general, you're having a conversation with yourself. And it's an opportunity for you to talk about some of these things, to put them down from pen to paper and have an opportunity to just talk it out. Lay it out there. Try to work your way through it. Why am I stressed? What am I stressed about? What am I doing that's helping? What am I doing that's hindering? How can I make this better? How can I work on this in a positive way? So make sure you're still writing. I'll tell you what, usually when I see athletes going through stressful times and I ask to see their running logs, it's the least amount they write during that period of time. So they'll be writing copious notes, and then they'll go through a stressful period, and it'll be 1 and 2 lines. And I'll say, this is exactly when you want to throw down in the writing department. This is when you want to keep writing. Get it all out. It doesn't matter how hard it is to get this out. Once you start, you will keep going, and it's going to help you process what's going on. So make sure you're writing. It also gives you an opportunity to put in some writing prompts in there, which are really important. And writing prompts that you should have all the time, okay? Like, write down a few things that you're grateful for. If you think of being stressed out as like, I don't know, like a person, that stressed out person hates being grateful. They don't like being grateful. They don't want to be grateful. There's nothing to be grateful for. If you spend some time writing a few things down when you're stressed out, but develop the habit early, so in your journal, you're always writing about a few things that you're grateful about, it's going to be a wonderful way to diminish some of that stress by writing out, okay, I've been stressed out all day long, absolutely all day long. I'm really grateful for REM's first album, Murmur. I'm just so grateful for it. It's so good. And maybe it's because when you're not feeling great, if you're feeling a little bit down, you're feeling sad, frustrated, angry, fearful, stressed out, you listen to Murmur by REM. I don't know. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. You should, because it's so good. You should also listen to Murmur when you're in a really good mood and during kind of late fall and also early spring, because it's just about perfect. The point here is find those things that you know what you're grateful for. I'm grateful for woodpeckers. I didn't even realize it till I saw the woodpecker. So if I was stressed out today, I would have that in there. Be like, you know what? I didn't realize it. I am grateful for woodpeckers. It's a wonderful way, like I said, to diminish the hold that being stressed out has over you. Speaking of woodpeckers, being out in nature has been shown to help with stress, to help manage stress. Spending time outside. Now, again, not everyone has access to that or the ability to do that based on weather, location. So you have to figure out if you do and how you could potentially take advantage of it. Is it in the morning, a brief walk around the neighborhood to get near some trees? And I'll tell you what, just walk up to a tree and touch its bark. It's a big deal. Listen to some birds. Sometimes it's just having the sounds of nature in the background. So maybe you don't have the ability to get into a park or something like that, or a green space. Okay, well, one thing you can do is you can have some green around your house. Okay, I'm not telling you have to, turn into like a plant weirdo, but being a plant weirdo is one of the best kind of weirdos to be. But having plants around and having some music with some bird song, sounds of nature, it helps. It does. And if you don't believe me, give it a try before you knock it. Anyway, all right, that's the last of the singing I'm going to do today. Another thing is get away from social media. Get away from it. Take a break. I'll tell you what. It is a great stress relief to get away from social media, especially right now. It doesn't mean you check out. It doesn't mean you don't pay attention to the world. What I'm saying is take a break every once in a while. If it's stressful to you right now, if the news is stressful to you, if social media is stressful to you, well, think like a coach, okay? So we have you do stressful stuff all the time. We'll have you do 400 meters at your 1,500 meter pace, which is fast. It's like a 9 out of 10 effort. All right. Well, we give you a break, don't we? We don't say, go do 8 by 400 at your 1,500 pace with no rest. That would be impossible. We're not going to set you up for that. There are breaks. It's called recovery. So you can come back and you can deal with the next stressful thing we put you through, which is another repeat. So if the news or social media is stressful to you, but you're not going to completely check out from it, that's fine. Make sure you're putting in breaks so you can recover. So when you do come back, you're not already at a deficit. That's what I'm trying to say. And that concept of recovery is so important when it comes to dealing with stress. Because if you're giving yourself the ability to recover, again, not saying it's going to eradicate the stress in your life, but you will be better equipped to handle the stress. You will be better equipped to take those pauses and breathe. You will be better equipped to realize that I need rest. I need community. I need time to breathe. I need to be aware. I need to move and exercise. I need to make sure I'm fueling myself. I need to make sure that I'm surrounding myself with positive influences, with helping hands, with people, situations, and substances that help and don't hinder. But when you're weakened by fatigue and the exhaustion and the relentlessness of being stressed, a lot of these capabilities, decisions, really, don't get made. So as you can see, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of reasons why you could be stressed. There's a lot of ways that stress is going to show up in your life. Like I said, anything from rapid heart rate to muscle aches, to lack of focus, to loss of appetite, to inability to sleep, to anger. And there are so many reasons why you could be stressed. There are also so many ways to help manage it, to deal with it. And that's what we're trying to do. We're never going to be able to get rid of all the stress in our life. We're never going to be able to guarantee that we're not going to be stressed out ever again. It's a ridiculous thing to even hope for. Because if you're going to live a life fully lived, you're going to have to deal with stress and you're going to be stressed out. Because like I said, what is stress? It's a response to situations where we feel out of control or unable to manage. That's always going to be a possibility if you're living a real life. The question is, can you manage it better? Can you deal with it better? And do you have the strength that if you can't do those things alone, do you have the strength to ask for help? And if you see someone who can't handle it themselves, do you have the strength to offer your help or help them get the help they need? That's what it means to be a teammate, and we are all teammates. We don't all rock the same jerseys, but we are all teammates. And I know I just said it, but I'm going to say it again because it can't be said enough. If you feel like you need help dealing with or handling the stress you've got in your life, you are strong enough to ask for help. You are. And it is a badass thing to go and ask for help. And I'll tell you what, this is what I'll guarantee. And believe me, there are very few guarantees in life. But if you go out and ask for help when you need it, I guarantee at some point in your life, you're going to have a person you care about in your life that also needs help. And you're going to be able to tell them about when you found the strength to ask for help. And that may be what gives them the strength to ask for help. That's badass. That's why there's no finish line. That's how you hand the baton off in a better place than you got it. And that's episode 89, Stressed Out. So thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing to the podcast. If you're not already subscribed, you should subscribe. Leave a rating, leave a review. Please share this podcast with friends, teammates, family members. Share with everybody. They need it. And if you need help, reach out for it. And if you have someone in your life that needs help, reach out to them. All right? So until next time, thank you for listening. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. And I'll meet you on the next starting line. Thank you so much for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast today. And if you haven't already subscribed or set yourself as a follower to the podcast, I really hope you would. And make sure you check out the show notes, because in those show notes, you're going to find a link to Coach Bennett's newsletter and all the social media sites I'm on, like Instagram and Threads and Cameo and Blue Sky and Nope, not on that one anymore. So all the ones I am on, you're going to find it in the show notes, so check that out as well. And as always, thank you again for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast. Until next time, you keep taking care of yourself and each other.